When a once-cold millionaire returns to his quiet hometown after years away, he expects nothing more than silence and regret. But destiny has other plans. On a calm autumn morning, he walks past a small cafe by the harbor, only to freeze in disbelief. Behind the counter stands his ex-wife, and two little twins with his eyes, his smile, his very soul. What begins as a story of guilt soon turns into one of forgiveness, love, and the second chances life sometimes hides in the most ordinary places. Before we begin, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, for giving your time to listen to stories that remind us what truly matters. May peace, health, and love fill your days wherever you are in the world. Tell me, what country are you listening from? And what time is it right now? The higher Nathan climbed in business, the emptier the view became. He had built an empire, but no one left to share the sunrise with. Morning rain traced thin, silver lines across the tall windows of his Seattle office. Down below, cars slid like dark fish through puddles, horns muffled by drizzle. The city moved fast, the way he used to move back when motion itself felt like meaning. Inside the corner suite, everything gleamed. Glass desk, black leather chair, awards that caught the fluorescent light. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. It was success distilled to silence. Nathan Cole adjusted the cuff of his charcoal suit and stared at the reflection, staring back, tired eyes, perfect tie, expression that hadn't changed in years. A digital plaque on the shelf blinked. Viridian Systems, Business Leader of the Year. The congratulatory emails kept pouring in, each line emptier than the last. Aaron Pierce, his young assistant, slipped in with a tablet. "Morning, sir. Board call in 15. Press wants a quote for the award. Something about perseverance or innovation?" Nathan's voice was smooth, automatic. "Tell them perseverance usually costs more than it pays." Aaron laughed politely, not sure if it was a joke. When the assistant left, Nathan opened the blinds a little wider. Across the harbor, the faint bell of a ferry carried through the rain. He remembered another morning, different decade. Different life, when someone had brewed coffee that wasn't from a machine and laughter filled a small kitchen. The memory came uninvited, soft but sharp, like the smell of cinnamon you didn't expect. His phone buzzed. "Mom." He hesitated before answering. "Hi, Nathan," Margaret Cole said, her tone careful, wrapped in gentility. "I saw the article in the Times. I'm proud of you, sweetheart." "Thanks, Mom." He kept his eyes on the skyline. "How's Florida?" "Warm, boring, same as always." "You still working too much?" He smiled faintly. "Only as much as it takes." There was a pause, the kind filled with things they never learned to say. "It's Sunday," she murmured. "Maybe you should visit church sometime. Not for God, but for company. I'll think about it." He ended the call before loneliness could answer for him. That night, the award dinner stretched like an endless commercial. Laughter bounced off chandeliers. Wine glasses clinked. The air hummed with success. When the band began an old love song, the one that had played at his wedding, Nathan's chest tightened. He left his seat, muttering about a call, and stepped outside. Rain fell again, gentle but relentless. He leaned against the marble column, breathing the wet air. For a moment, he imagined the face of a woman with copper hair and eyes, the color of the sound before dawn. Lila. The name surfaced before he could stop it. Back inside, Aaron approached with an umbrella. "Sir, everything okay?" "Fine," Nathan said. But the lie felt heavier than the rain. Later, in his apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, he sat in the half-light, tie undone, city spread below like a constellation he no longer belonged to. The silence pressed close, humming with ghosts of laughter, a child's giggle he once dreamed of hearing but never did. His laptop pinged a new email flagged urgent. Port Townsend property acquisition, site visit required. He clicked the map. 2 hours west, a small coastal town fringed by forests and gulls. For reasons he couldn't name, Nathan saved the address, stood, and began packing an overnight bag. He drove out of Seattle before dawn, when the city lights still shimmered like distant ships. The highway unwound through mist and cedar forests. Coffee steamed from the cup beside him, its scent mingling with the damp air. The wipers beat a slow rhythm, steady and hypnotic. For the first time in months, no notifications lit his phone. The world had gone blessedly quiet. Near Tacoma, the clouds lifted enough to reveal the faint blush of morning. He passed diners, opening for breakfast, silver-haired couples sitting by windows, a waitress refilling mugs, a radio murmuring old country songs. It looked like another universe. He almost stopped, then didn't. Some habits of hurry are hard to break. 2 hours later, a wooden sign welcomed him. Port Townsend, where the sea meets the past. The slogan made him smile. The past, he thought. I already met it once, and it didn't go well. The town looked pulled from another century Victorian storefronts, hanging flower baskets, gulls circling above the harbor. On Water Street, a little cafe glowed in the gray light. A carved sign read maple and sunlight. People lined up for coffee, their laughter soft as the surf beyond the pier. He parked across the street. For a reason he couldn't explain, his pulse quickened. Through the window, he saw a woman moving behind the counter, hair twisted in a loose knot, flower on her wrist. She turned, smiling at a customer, and the years collapsed. Lila. For a heartbeat, he couldn't breathe. She looked older, more grounded, light still in her eyes, but tempered by something steadier like fire seen through glass. Then 2 children darted around her, twins, maybe 6 or 7, balancing trays of muffins. A boy and a girl, laughing the same clear laugh that once lived in his dreams. Nathan stepped back, gripping the steering wheel of his parked car. The resemblance hit him like a wave. The girl's face, those eyes, his own, reflected 30 years younger. He told himself it couldn't be, that coincidence played cruel tricks. But logic had no defense against memory. His chest ached in a place success had never reached. He crossed the street before he could change his mind. The bell above the cafe door chimed, a small, homely sound. Warmth washed over him, baked apples, cinnamon, roasted beans. The kind of smell that once meant home. "Morning," said the woman behind the counter, her voice even, professional. "What can I get for you?" Her eyes met his. A second passed, then another. No gasp, no outburst, only the faint tightening of her jaw. "Coffee's fresh. Pumpkin pie's still warm." He cleared his throat. "Coffee's fine." "Black." She nodded, turned away. The twins bustled near the pastry case. The boy dropped a napkin. Nathan stooped to pick it up, and for an instant the child's gaze locked with his. Recognition? No, just curiosity. But the boy smiled shyly and whispered, "Thanks, mister." Nathan left a $10 bill in the tip jar, twice the price of the coffee, and stepped back into the drizzle. The sea wind smelled of salt and rain. Across the street he paused, watching the small family through the window. The woman pouring coffee, the children arranging pies, the golden light painting everything warm. He told himself to drive away. He told himself this was none of his business, that ghosts should stay buried. But as he started the engine, the reflection of those 2 little faces lingered on the glass, refusing to fade. He didn't know that the road to Port Townsend would lead him back to everything he'd once lost. The next morning, Port Townsend woke to the scent of rain and cinnamon. Seagulls drifted above the harbor, their cries blending with the slow hum of waves against the pier. Nathan parked near the old marina, the mist still low enough to blur the line between sea and sky. Everything about this town seemed to move at half the speed of Seattle time. Here breathed instead of raced. He walked along Water Street, passing antique shops with carved signs and window displays of handmade quilts, jars of jam, and small wooden boats. People greeted each other by name. Somewhere, a church bell chimed 9 times. Nathan wondered when he'd last heard a bell that wasn't a phone notification. The little cafe he'd seen the day before sat on the corner, already open. The sign, Maple and Sunlight, swung gently in the breeze, letters painted in soft gold. Through the window, he could see Lila wiping down the counter while the 2 children set napkins on tables too tall for their reach. He lingered a moment on the sidewalk, debating with himself. Maybe he'd imagined the resemblance. Maybe she had moved on long ago. But curiosity, or something deeper, pushed him through the door. A small bell chimed overhead. Warmth met him like a gentle hand on the shoulder. The air smelled of butter, coffee, and maple syrup. Conversations murmured in the background, locals discussing the upcoming wooden boat festival, an old fisherman joking about the rain that never stopped. Lila looked up. For a moment, the years between them vanished. Then professionalism replaced surprise. "Good morning," she said, the same even tone she'd used with customers for years. "What can I get for you?" Nathan managed a polite smile. Coffee. Black, please. She nodded, turning to pour. We brew it strong here. Hope you don't mind. I remember, he said quietly. Her hand hesitated on the pot, just long enough for a drop of coffee to spill. She set it down, took a breath, then placed the cup before him. $2.50, she said. He reached for his wallet, laying down a 5 and leaving the change. Keep it. Thank you. She didn't meet his eyes. The twins appeared again, each balancing a small tray of muffins. The boy Lucas grinned at him. The girl Maya stayed close to her mother, studying Nathan with curious, serious eyes. Careful, guys, Lila warned softly. Hot trays. Lucas waved at Nathan. You here for the festival? I might be, he said. You helping your mom today? Every day, the boy announced proudly. We're saving for new bikes, Nathan smiled, the sound of his own laughter feeling strange in his throat. That's a good goal. Lila stepped between them gently. Lucas, the display case, please. The boy obeyed. For a few seconds, only the hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. Nathan took a sip. The coffee was exactly as he remembered, strong, honest, a little bitter. The kind that didn't need sugar. You've done well, he said finally. The place is beautiful. Thank you. It keeps us busy. Her voice softened, though distance still lived in it. People around here are kind. They tip well if the coffee's hot and the pie's sweet. He wanted to say more, ask where she'd been, if she'd been happy, if those children were his. But words hung heavy between them like fog that refused to clear. Instead, he nodded and finished his coffee. Lila turned to greet another customer, her smile the same polite mask as before. Nathan left quietly, the bell chiming behind him. Outside, the drizzle had returned, brushing his shoulders like memory. He stood beneath the awning, watching the woman and the 2 children through the glass. Inside, warmth and laughter. Outside, the gray edge of the sea. He told himself he'd leave town after lunch. He'd already seen what he came for, proof that life had gone on without him. Yet something inside refused to settle, like a song half heard that demanded to be finished. By noon, the clouds thinned, letting narrow spears of sunlight fall over the harbor. Nathan wandered along the pier, the taste of bitter coffee still on his tongue. He watched the gulls hover, waiting for fishermen to toss scraps from their buckets. Wooden boats rocked lazily at anchor. A man in a knit cap nodded to him. You new in town? Just visiting, Nathan replied. Stay long enough. The sea'll tell you its secrets. The man chuckled and moved on. Nathan walked until he reached a bench overlooking the bay. The water shimmered pewter gray, restless and endless. He opened his phone, 43 unread emails, 2 missed calls from Aaron. For once, he didn't answer. Instead, he slipped the phone into his jacket and let the sound of waves fill the silence that used to belong to meetings. When he finally looked up again, he saw a small art store across the street windows lined with children's drawings of sailboats and sunsets. In the center hung one picture that made him stop. A family of 4 beneath a golden tree, stick figures holding hands, a small heart drawn between them. The signature at the bottom was a shaky scrawl, Maya C. The same handwriting he'd seen yesterday on a paper cup thank you written in green marker. He stepped closer, heart thudding. The shopkeeper, an older woman with silver braids, smiled. That one's from the Café kids. Sweet little artists. Their mom runs Maple and Sunlight. Nathan swallowed. They sell their drawings? Sometimes. She donates the money to the town library. Says she wants the kids to learn generosity early. The woman looked at him kindly. You, a friend of hers? He hesitated. Something like that. Walking back, he noticed how the light had changed. The town glowed softer now, as if the afternoon itself wanted to remember. When he reached the cafe again, the crowd had thinned. Lila stood outside arranging pumpkins by the window. Her hair caught the light like copper thread. Need a hand? He asked. She looked up, startled. You're still here. I was curious if you needed help. I think I have it covered, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You shouldn't stay out in the damp. Tourists catch colds easily. I'm not sure I'm a tourist, he smiled faintly, more like someone who took a wrong turn and found the right place. Leela didn't reply. She carried another pumpkin inside. Nathan followed with the last one, setting it gently on the display table. The twins clapped. Thank you, mister, Maya said. Lila handed them each a cookie. Time for your drawing class." As they left with sketchbooks under their arms, she turned back to Nathan. "You shouldn't get involved. Whatever you think you remember, it's been a long time." "I'm not here to make trouble." Then why are you here?" He looked around the little shop, the faded photos, the wooden counter polished by years of use, the warmth that didn't exist in any of his offices. "Maybe," he said softly, "because I forgot what this felt like." For the first time, her eyes softened. People don't change that easily. Maybe not, but sometimes they try. The wind rattled the windows. For a moment, neither spoke. Lila's expression shifted something between fatigue and forgiveness, but before she could answer, a customer entered carrying a bouquet of late-blooming asters. The moment passed. Nathan finished his coffee and reached for his coat. "Thank you for the coffee," he said. She nodded. "Drive safe." He paused at the door, wanting to say more, to ask about the children, the years, the empty side of his bed, but words failed him. The bell chimed as he stepped out into the street. The sky had begun to clear, a thin band of gold stretching over the bay. From inside, Maya's laughter rang out, bright and fleeting. Nathan stood there a long time. The sound of it filling the quiet places in him he hadn't known were still alive. That evening, he booked another night at the inn by the harbor. He told himself it was because of the weather, because the roads were slick and dark. But deep down, he knew he wasn't ready to leave, not yet. The rain returned overnight, a soft percussion against the inn's windowpane. Nathan lay awake, listening to it mix with the distant foghorn. Sleep wouldn't come. Too many images crowded his mind: the girl's curious eyes, the boy's laugh, Lila's steady voice holding back the years. He turned over, but the past had already followed him here, curling up like an uninvited guest. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the town rinsed and shining. The innkeeper, a cheerful woman named Ruth, served pancakes and black coffee in a dining room that smelled of butter and pine. "You here for business or just a little soul-searching?" she asked with a wink. "Maybe both," Nathan said. "Well, this town's good for either. The ocean listens better than most people." She poured more coffee and left him smiling to himself. After breakfast, he wandered to the harbor. The world felt stripped clean. Sails glistened. Seagulls argued on lampposts, and children chased puddles along the pier. He stopped in front of an old photo display outside the Maritime Museum. Faded black and white images showed fishermen, shipbuilders, and families who had once called this place home. Among them was a more recent color photograph of a small art fair. Lila, standing behind a table of pies and drawings. Two children beside her holding signs that read, "Support the library." The photo was dated 3 years ago. He touched the corner of the image as if to test its reality. She stayed here all this time. A town this small, someone must have known. Someone might know the truth. He crossed to the cafe again, but this time didn't go inside. From across the street, he watched as Lila helped an elderly man with his order, smiling easily, her hair catching the light. The twins ran in and out, bringing napkins, giggling. He realized he'd been standing there too long when a voice spoke behind him. "Good coffee, isn't it?" Nathan turned. The voice belonged to a woman about his age, wearing a bookstore apron. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you," she said. "You look like someone deciding between two kinds of regret." He laughed quietly. "Maybe I am." "I'm Nora," she said, offering a hand. "I run the bookstore next door. Everyone passes by here eventually, even if they pretend not to." He shook her hand. "Nathan?" Her gaze followed his toward the cafe. "Lila Carter's place. Best pie on the peninsula. She's got those twins, Maya and Lucas. Sweet kids. Everyone loves them." "Yeah?" he said softly. "They seem good." Good's an understatement. She raised them mostly on her own. Folks around here helped when she first moved back, 8 years ago? She doesn't talk much about before that. Nathan tried to sound casual. "So she came back around then?" Bought this place cheap, fixed it up herself. Strong woman. Nora tilted her head, studying him. "You a friend?" He hesitated. "I used to be." Nora smiled kindly. "Well, if you plan to say hello, do it soon. The longer you wait, the heavier words get." He nodded, watching her walk away. The wind picked up, scattering a few yellow leaves across the street. In the cafe window, Lila knelt beside the children, showing them how to fold paper napkins into little boats. Lucas placed one on the counter and blew, laughing as it slid forward. Lila laughed too, That same soft laugh he'd heard years ago on mornings filled with burnt toast and hope. Nathan crossed the street again before he could stop himself. The bell chimed when he entered. Lila looked up, expression unreadable. "Back so soon?" she asked. "I forgot to try the pie." Lila hesitated, then nodded toward an empty table by the window. "One slice or two?" "Just one," Nathan said. "Unless it's as good as it used to be." She froze for a second at the word used. Then, with quiet grace, she set the plate before him and walked away. The first bite was everything memory had promised. Maple sweet, cinnamon sharp, the taste of mornings long gone. The bell above the door rang again as customers came and went, and soon the twins returned from their art class, faces flushed with laughter. Maya climbed onto a stool beside him, small fingers tracing circles on the counter. "You came back," she said. He smiled. "Couldn't stay away from that pie." "Mom says people always come back for the pie," Lucas added, sliding in next to her. "But I think it's the smell, or maybe the music." From the back corner, an old radio hummed an Ella Fitzgerald tune. Nathan nodded. "Maybe all of it together." Lila called to them, her tone half warning, half tender. "Don't bother the customer." "It's okay," Nathan said quickly. "They're good company. When she turned away, Maya leaned closer. "You look like someone in Mommy's old photo album." Nathan's breath caught. "Do I?" "Uh-huh." But the man in the picture was smiling more. He forced a laugh, though something inside him ached. "Maybe that's why I'm here to remember how." A moment later, Lila appeared, wiping her hands on a towel. "Kids, go help Mrs. Hayes with her order." They obeyed, reluctant but cheerful. When they were gone, she faced him, eyes guarded. "You shouldn't encourage them. They get attached easily." "I wasn't trying to," he said softly. "They just remind me of—" He stopped himself. "Of being young." "Seattle does that to people?" she asked, a trace of sarcasm in her voice. He smiled faintly. "Seattle does a lot of things. Mostly it teaches you what you miss." The silence that followed wasn't angry, just heavy. Outside, a gull shrieked. Somewhere down the street, a truck rolled over wet gravel. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't expect to see you again." "Neither did I," he admitted. "But maybe I needed to." "Needed to what?" "To remember I'm human." Her expression softened, almost pitying. "That's a hard thing to forget." He stood, leaving money on the counter. "I'll see you around, Lila." "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said quietly. He paused by the door. "I've already broken enough of those." The bell chimed as he stepped outside. The sky had turned the color of pewter again, clouds heavy with new rain. He walked toward the harbor, hands in his coat pockets, the taste of maple still lingering a sweet ghost of what once was. From behind him came the muffled laughter of children and the sound of the cafe door closing. Each step away felt like leaving another piece of himself on that street. He stopped at the edge of the pier, watching the gulls dive and rise. Reflections rippled in the water faces he couldn't forget, eyes that looked too much like his own. The wind carried the smell of salt and cinnamon, and Nathan realized that no matter how far he'd run, the past had been waiting exactly here. The rain eased into a fine drizzle that lingered for days, the kind that turned every surface silver and soft. Nathan found himself staying in Port Townsend without meaning to. Each morning he promised to leave, and each evening he found a new reason to stay one more walk by the sea, one more cup of coffee that tasted like the past. He started going to the cafe early, before the crowd. Lila didn't ask why. She simply poured his coffee and went about her work, and he stayed quiet, grateful for the small permission of being near. He learned the rhythms of the place, the way the bell over the door always rang twice in the wind, the smell of fresh muffins by 7, the hum of conversation by 8. On the third morning, Lucas waved him over to the counter, proudly holding a jar labeled Bike Fund. "Mom says tips go here now," the boy said. "Want to help us ride faster?" Nathan smiled and dropped a 20 inside. "Maybe you'll fly." Maya laughed. "He means thank you. He's saving for both of us." And their laughter filled the little shop, a sound that made the air feel lighter. Lila turned from the espresso machine and caught his eye. For once, she didn't look away. By noon, sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the windows gold. The smell of roasted coffee mixed with the ocean breeze sneaking through the door. It was the kind of day that made time slow down, You keep showing up, Lila said as she wiped the counter beside him. Maybe I like the company. She gave a quiet half smile. Company or nostalgia? Both, maybe. One's easier to explain than the other. For a long moment, only the sound of the grinder filled the air. Finally, she said, "You never answered my letter." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. I never got one, her brow furrowed. I wrote after you left, twice. They came back unopened. He shook his head slowly. My mother handled my mail that year. I was not myself. Lila looked down, expression unreadable. That explains some things, but not all. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, she said softly. Because that's not what I'm offering. He wanted to say he understood, but truth was harder. Instead, he helped carry boxes of apples from the back to the front display. They worked side by side in silence, the kind that didn't hurt as much as it used to. When the last box was stacked, Lila poured him another cup. You know, she said, this town remembers kindness longer than mistakes. But it remembers both. He nodded. I'm starting to see that. Outside, children ran past carrying kites, their laughter scattering across the street like birds. Inside, the air felt warm again. For the first time in years, Nathan didn't rush anywhere. He stayed. That evening, the harbor glowed under the last light of day. The sea was calm, rippling in shades of copper and violet. Nathan walked the narrow streets alone, past shuttered shops and porch lights flickering on. He could hear faint music drifting from maple and sunlight, Lila's voice humming along with the radio as she closed up for the night. The sound tugged at something deep inside him, a memory of nights when that same voice used to fill their apartment in Seattle. He paused outside the cafe, hands in his pockets, unsure whether to knock. Through the window, he saw her wiping tables while the twins arranged chairs with solemn diligence. Maya stood on tiptoe, stretching to reach a lamp cord. When she couldn't, Nathan instinctively stepped inside. Need a tall volunteer? He asked. Lila startled slightly but smiled, despite herself. You never could resist fixing things. Some habits stay. He pulled the cord, bathing the room in soft amber light. For a moment the cafe looked like a painting steam rising, rain tapping gently at the windows, the glow wrapping around them like forgiveness waiting to happen. Lucas ran up with a broom twice his size. We're closing soon, mister. Nathan laughed. Then I'd better sweep fast. Lila tried to protest, but he took the broom anyway. They cleaned together, an unlikely rhythm forming between them, his quiet steadiness, her silent acceptance. When everything was done, she handed him a paper cup, house blend, on the house. He took it, inhaling the scent. Still the best coffee I've ever had. She shrugged lightly. Maybe you just forgot what good coffee tastes like. Maybe I forgot a lot of things. Her eyes softened at that. You still working for that big company? I resigned last week, he said, surprising even himself as the words came out. Told them I needed time to think. And do you? Not yet. But this place helps. And she leaned against the counter, arms crossed, expression gentler now. People come here to rest, Nathan, not to rewrite their lives. He looked down at his cup. Maybe I need both. The twins came running back from the kitchen, each holding a drawing. Maya's picture showed the cafe under a glowing sun. Lucas had drawn the harbor with a tiny boat and a man standing alone on the dock. That's you, he told Nathan proudly. Nathan studied it, his throat tightening. You made me taller than I am. Mom says that's what hope does, Maya said, smiling. Lila froze at her daughter's words, but Nathan only nodded, voice quiet. She's right. They all stood there a moment longer, the world outside dimming into mist. Then Lila cleared her throat. We're done for today. You should get some rest. He nodded, setting the cup down. Thank you for letting me stay. You didn't ask, she said softly. But I didn't say no either. He smiled faintly and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back once more. Tomorrow, he said. I'll bring muffins. My turn. She gave a small, knowing smile. We'll see. Outside, the night smelled of salt and pine. The streetlights flickered through the fog as he walked back to the inn. He passed the window of the bookstore. Nora had left a note taped to the glass. Book club meeting Friday. Bring a friend. Beneath it, someone had doodled a tiny heart. He smiled. shaking his head. Back at the inn, Ruth looked up from the counter. "You've got the look of a man who found something worth staying for," she teased. "Maybe just something worth remembering," Nathan replied. He went to his room, opened the curtains, and watched the lights of the harbor blink like slow, patient stars. Somewhere in the dark, the bell above the cafe door chimed once, carried on the wind. He wasn't sure if it was memory or invitation, but for the first time in years, the sound didn't hurt. It felt like a beginning. The first cold mornings of November arrived with the smell of pine and wood smoke drifting through the harbor. Port Townsend began to dress itself for the fall festival banners fluttering between lampposts, stalls being painted bright orange and gold. Children practiced songs for the school parade. The town seemed to hum with a quiet joy, and Nathan found himself part of it before he realized he'd joined. He spent most days at the cafe now. At first, he offered to fix the leaky back door. Then he repaired the shelf, painted the window trim, restocked supplies when deliveries came late. Lila no longer protested. "You're becoming part of the furniture," she teased one afternoon. "Good," he replied. "Maybe someone will finally dust me off." The twins adored him. Lucas followed him everywhere, eager to learn how to hammer or stir batter. Maya preferred to sit beside him while she drew, tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth in concentration. She often asked questions that landed straight in his heart. "Do people forget faces, Mr. Nathan?" she said once, her pencil hovering over the paper. "Sometimes," he told her, "but not the ones they love." She considered that, nodded solemnly, and went back to shading the sky. It was on one of those golden afternoons that he offered to walk the children to the pier while Lila closed early for deliveries. The air smelled of caramel and seaweed, a strange but pleasant mix. The twins ran ahead, chasing seagulls, their laughter echoing against the waves. Lucas found a piece of driftwood, shaped like a sword, and held it high. "I'm the captain," Maya pointed at Nathan. "Then he's the sailor who finds treasure." "What kind of treasure?" he asked. "The kind you lose before you know it's important," she said. Her words stopped him cold. He looked at her, but she was already busy drawing shapes in the sand. When they returned, the cafe glowed warm in the early evening light. Lila stood behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "They didn't drive you crazy?" "They were perfect," he said. "You've raised them well." Her eyes softened, proud and sad at once. "They make it easy to forget the hard parts." And later, as the crowd thinned, the children showed him their drawings. Lucas had sketched the harbor. Maya's page showed a man and two children under a maple tree. At the bottom, she had written in careful block letters, "Family." Nathan swallowed the ache rising in his chest. "That's beautiful," he said. "You can have it," Maya offered. "It'll make you smile when you're lonely." He didn't trust his voice, so he only nodded and folded the paper carefully, as if it were something sacred. That evening, he lingered until closing. The streets outside shimmered with rain. Lila counted the day's earnings, then looked up at him. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said softly. "Doing what?" "Showing up. Pretending this is normal." "I'm not pretending," he said. "I'm learning how to stay." Her gaze met his, uncertain but not cold. "That's a big word for someone who used to run." He smiled gently. "Maybe that's why I'm practicing." Hell. Outside, thunder rumbled over the sound, far off but coming closer. That night, the storm rolled in from the Pacific, steady and low. Rain drummed against the cafe windows, and thunder rumbled beyond the bay like an old grievance, finding its voice. Lila stayed late to secure the shutters. Nathan insisted on helping. "You don't have to play the hero," she said, struggling with a latch. "I'm not," he answered. "Just someone who hates seeing things fall apart." "Oh?" She glanced at him, the lightning briefly etching his face in white and shadow. "Some things already did," she whispered. He didn't reply. Outside, the wind howled through the narrow street. Inside, the air smelled of wet wood and cinnamon. The children slept in the small apartment above the shop. The silence between the thunderclaps felt fragile, intimate, like standing too close to a memory. When the rain eased, he reached for his coat. "You should rest. I'll check the roof gutter before I go." "Nathan," she began, but stopped. "Be careful." He climbed the narrow ladder behind the building, boots slipping slightly on the wet metal. The view from the roof was all silver sea and storm cloud. He could see the faint reflection of the cafe's sign swinging below, light flickering through the window where Lila stood watching. For a moment, he felt the weight of everything he'd broken, the promises, the years, the simple things that could never be fixed by money or apologies. A sudden shout cut through the rain. "Mr. Nathan." He looked down. Maya stood at the back door, clutching something in her hands. "Mom said you'd fall if you stay too long." He climbed down, heart thudding. "You're supposed to be asleep, little one." "I had to give you this." She held out a folded sheet of paper, the corners smudged from her fingers. "I finished the drawing." He crouched to her level. "Can I look?" She nodded. Inside was a new picture. 4 figures now, not 3. A man beside a woman, 2 children between them, hands linked under a sky painted with swirling yellow and red. Above them, she'd written in uneven letters, "The family that stayed." Nathan stared at it, rain streaking his face though the storm had quieted. "Why did you draw me there, Maya?" She frowned, as if the question were silly. "Because you belong." He swallowed hard, unable to speak. She reached out and touched his sleeve. "Don't be sad," she said softly. "Mom cries sometimes too, but when you come, she smiles more." He exhaled shakily. "You're very wise for someone your age." "Grandma says that," she said proudly. "Even though I don't have one." He looked up toward the lit window where Lila stood, hand pressed to the glass. "Maybe you do," he murmured. Maya hugged him suddenly, quick and fierce. "Good night, Mr. Nathan." "Good night, sweetheart." She ran back inside, leaving him alone with the paper in his hands. He unfolded it again under the lamplight, the colors bright against the rain-dark street. A tremor went through him, not just sadness, but something gentler, like forgiveness finding its way in. Later, in his small room at the inn, he placed the drawing on the bedside table. The wind rattled the windows, and the sound reminded him of a heartbeat, steady, human, fragile. He stared at the picture until sleep finally came. When morning broke, the storm had passed. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, catching the edges of the drawing. For the first time in years, Nathan woke with a sense of belonging that no city skyline had ever given him. He dressed quietly and looked out toward the harbor, where gulls wheeled in the pale blue sky. Somewhere down the street, he could hear Lila's laughter carried on the wind. It was a sound that reached straight through him, clean, bright, alive. He smiled. "Maybe," he whispered, "some things don't fall apart forever." That morning, he went back to the cafe with a box of muffins and the folded drawing tucked carefully inside his coat pocket. That night, for the first time in years, Nathan prayed not for success, but for a second chance. The next few days blurred together in a soft rhythm of rain and small kindnesses. Port Townsend prepared for the festival while the sky hung low and gray, and Nathan's days fell into quiet routine, helping Lila carry supplies, walking the twins to school, fixing a squeaky hinge, making her laugh once or twice without meaning to. The cafe had become his anchor. But beneath the calm, something trembled in unease he couldn't name. Sometimes Lila would stop mid-sentence, her eyes clouding as if remembering a pain too private to share. Other times when he tried to talk about the past, she would simply say, "Not now, Nathan," and change the subject. One evening, while he was closing up, her phone rang. She stepped outside to answer, her voice low, the tone sharp in a way he hadn't heard in years. He didn't mean to listen, but the storm outside carried her words through the door. "Yes, Mother Cole, I know he's here." A pause. "Because this is his mess to fix, not yours." Nathan froze. The world seemed to tilt slightly. He hadn't spoken to his mother in weeks, not since he'd left Seattle without explanation. When Lila came back in, she looked startled to find him standing there. "You heard?" He nodded slowly. "She called you?" "She called the cafe," Lila said, setting the phone down hard. "Said she wanted to make sure you hadn't done anything foolish. Funny, coming from her." She never told me you called," Nathan murmured. Lila laughed bitterly. "You think I didn't try? For months, I wrote. I begged her to tell you. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind, or maybe—" Her voice cracked. "Maybe you just didn't care." He stepped closer. "Lila, I swear I never knew." The thunder rolled outside, long and low. For a moment, all he could hear was the rain against the windows. She turned away, arms folded tightly. "You always had excuses, Nathan. Business, your father's legacy, your mother's plans. There was always something more important than us. This isn't an excuse, he said quietly. It's the truth. Then prove it. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Go to her. Ask her what she did. He wanted to argue, to explain, but the look in her eyes silenced him. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion, the kind that comes after years of disappointment. I will, he said finally. Tomorrow. Oh? That night, he drove back to the inn, rain blurring the world outside the windshield. He tried calling his mother 3 times. No answer. When he arrived, Ruth was locking the front door. Rough weather again, she said. You might want to stay put tomorrow if the storm keeps up. Storm? Big one coming in from the coast, she said, shaking her head. Old-timers say it'll hit hard. He forced a smile. Seems like storms have good timing lately. Upstairs, he sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, waiting for the call that never came. The wind began to howl through the eaves, and the first cracks of lightning painted the sky white. He thought about Lila's face, the way her voice trembled when she said, prove it. By midnight, he couldn't sit still anymore. He threw on his coat and drove through sheets of rain toward his mother's estate just outside Seattle. The highway shimmered under the downpour, taillights blurring like red ghosts. By the time he reached the gates, the storm was raging in full force. He stepped out of the car, drenched instantly, and pounded on the front door. Margaret Cole appeared in her robe, startled and pale. Nathan? Good heavens, what are you doing here? He met her eyes, voice raw. We need to talk. Margaret Cole's eyes widened at the sight of her son standing there, rain streaming down his face. The storm wind blew through the open door, scattering leaves across the marble floor. Nathan, for heaven's sake, you'll catch your death. Come inside. He stepped in, dripping water, his breath still unsteady from the drive. Why did you call Lila? She blinked. I thought she should know where you were. She already knew. What I don't know, he said, his voice low, is why you never told me about her letters. Margaret froze. The silence between them was sharp as the lightning flashing through the windows. You spoke to her. She told me everything. The letters, the calls, how she tried to reach me after I left. He took a step closer. Tell me, Mom, did you keep them from me? Her lips tightened. I did what I had to. You were falling apart after the merger. And she was a distraction. A distraction? His laugh was hollow. She was my life. You were too young to know what you wanted. You had your father's company to protect, your future to build, and she would have kept you tied to small dreams. She was carrying my children. Margaret's face blanched. I didn't know. Yes, you did. His voice broke. You read the letters. You knew, and you chose silence. The house shook as thunder cracked overhead. Margaret turned away, gripping the edge of the piano as if to steady herself. I thought I was saving you, she whispered. After your father died, you were all I had left. I couldn't watch you throw everything away. You didn't save me, he said. You erased me. Rain lashed against the windows. The old clock ticked louder than usual, each second a reminder of time they'd lost. Margaret's voice trembled. Nathan, please, it was so long ago. She has her life. You have yours. No, he said softly, shaking his head. I had a life, and you buried it under your idea of success. Ugh. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment, everything glowed white. Nathan's hands clenched at his sides. 7 years, Mom! You stole 7 years from them! From me! Tears filled her eyes. I thought I was doing the right thing. He exhaled, the anger draining into something quieter, heavier. That's what everyone says before they destroy something that mattered. Margaret reached out, but he stepped back. I can't fix the past, she said. Then stop trying to control the present. Oh, for a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside screamed through the eaves, and thunder rolled like grief itself. Finally, she whispered, What will you do? Go back, he said. Tell her the truth, and maybe earn a chance to be part of their lives, if she'll let me. He turned to leave, but her hand caught his sleeve. Nathan, wait. Her voice broke completely. Tell them I'm sorry. I only ever wanted you to be loved. And he looked at her, the woman who had once seemed invincible, now small beneath the weight of her own regret. Then stop hiding from it, he said quietly. Love isn't something you control. He left before she could answer. The rain hit him full in the face, cold and cleansing. The drive back to Port Townsend was a blur of storm and memory. When he reached the town limits, power lines flickered, and the streets glistened with puddles. The cafe's windows were dark, but light glowed faintly in the apartment upstairs. He parked, stepped out into the rain, and crossed the street. The wind nearly pushed him back, but he kept walking until he reached the wooden bridge that overlooked the bay. Water crashed below, fierce and relentless. He leaned against the railing, soaked to the bone, shouting into the storm as if it could hear him. "You stole 7 years of their lives, and mine." A flash of lightning tore across the sky. Through the rain, a figure appeared, Lila, running toward him, hair whipped by the wind, her coat flapping like a sail. She grabbed his arm before he could move closer to the edge. "Don't let the storm take what's left," she cried. Their eyes met, rain and tears indistinguishable. He looked at her, the woman he'd lost and found again in the same lifetime, and for the first time in years, he let the walls fall. He reached for her, and she didn't pull away. The thunder softened, the wind easing its fury. Around them, the rain began to slow, falling lighter, almost tender. The sea still roared, but its rhythm changed less of rage, more of release. When they finally turned back toward town, the storm had passed. Behind them, the horizon flickered faintly with dawn. The next morning, silence covered the town, but something in Nathan's heart had shifted forever. By the time dawn broke, the storm had vanished, leaving Port Townsend wrapped in a strange stillness. The streets were damp and shining, gulls gliding low over the quiet harbor. Nathan walked through the mist, his coat heavy with salt and rain, every step echoing the weight of the night before. The town looked unchanged, yet everything inside him had shifted like the sea after a long, hard tide. When he reached Maple and Sunlight, the door was already open. The smell of baked apples and fresh bread spilled into the street. Inside, Lila moved between tables, placing vases of sunflowers while the twins arranged small pumpkins along the counter. The light caught her face, soft and calm, as if the storm had washed away the last shadow between them. She looked up when he entered. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "You went to see her." He nodded. She admitted it. The letters, the lies, all of it. Lila's hands stilled on the tablecloth. "And she's sorry," he said simply, "for everything. But that doesn't change what happened." Lila exhaled, the sound somewhere between relief and exhaustion. "No, it doesn't. But maybe it changes what happens next." Before he could answer, Lucas ran to him, holding up a small flyer. "Mom says we're helping at the festival today. There'll be music and pie contests and everything." Nathan smiled. "Sounds like the best kind of trouble." The boy grinned. "You're coming, right?" He hesitated, then glanced at Lila. She nodded once, the faintest curve of a smile. "We could use an extra pair of hands," she said. That afternoon, the town burst into color. The fall festival filled the square with stalls selling hot cider, caramel corn, and hand-carved crafts. Children ran between hay bales. Their laughter carried on the crisp air. Nathan helped set up the cafe booth, an old wooden cart decorated with maple leaves and jars of pie filling. Lila's pies were already famous. People lined up before the contest even began. "You're a natural salesman," she teased as he handed out slices with practiced charm. "Decades of corporate training finally paying off," he said. "Only this time, I actually believe in the product." She laughed, and the sound felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. As evening approached, the sky turned amber. A small stage was set near the fountain where local musicians played gentle folk tunes. The twins danced in circles, their cheeks flushed pink from the cold. Nathan caught himself laughing out loud, something he hadn't done in years. When the judging began, Lila stood by her cart, pretending not to care. Nathan nudged her. "You're nervous." "I'm fine," she said, but her fingers fidgeted with her apron string. Minutes later, the mayor announced the results. First place, Maple and Sunlight Café. Lucas whooped. Maya threw her arms around her mother. The crowd cheered, and for the first time, Lila's laugh rang pure and free. She turned toward Nathan, eyes shining, and before she could stop herself, she hugged him. For a brief, perfect moment, The world seemed to pause around them. Then someone called for a photo, and she pulled back, flustered, cheeks warm. "You're part of this too," she said. Nathan smiled. "Only if the kids take center stage." They posed together, Lila, the twins, and Nathan standing just behind them as camera flashes caught the golden hour light. When the picture was taken, he looked at the family in front of him and realized, with quiet certainty, that this was the moment he'd been running toward all along. As night fell, lanterns lit up across the square, casting everything in a soft, glowing haze. The music swelled, and Lila turned to him. "Stay for the fireworks?" He nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." The first fireworks burst above the harbor, painting the night with color. The crowd gasped and clapped as red and gold lights rippled across the sky, reflected in the dark water below. Nathan stood beside Lila and the twins, a paper cup of cider warming his hands. The air smelled of sugar and pine smoke, and for the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. Lucas tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Nathan, lift me up!" "I can't see the big ones." Nathan laughed and hoisted the boy onto his shoulders. "There, best seat in town." Maya pressed closer to Lila, eyes wide as the fireworks bloomed overhead. "It's like the sky is happy," she whispered. Lila smiled faintly. "Maybe it is." A soft wind blew through the square, carrying laughter and the sound of fiddles from a nearby stage. Couples danced, children chased each other through fallen leaves. For once, time seemed generous, stretching, lingering, letting them breathe. Then, amid the brightness and noise, came a sharp cry. "Lucas!" Nathan turned just in time to see the boy slip near the fountain, feet catching on the wet cobblestones. He fell backward, striking his head with a dull thud. The world seemed to collapse into a single heartbeat. Lila screamed, running forward. Nathan was already there, kneeling beside the boy. "Lucas, can you hear me?" The child blinked weakly, tears mixing with blood at his temple. "It hurts," he whispered. "It's okay, buddy," Nathan said, voice shaking but calm. "You're going to be okay." He pressed his hand gently against the wound to stop the bleeding. "Lila, call the clinic." People gathered, their voices blending into a worried hum. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had already called for help. Nathan stayed beside the boy, murmuring quietly, trying to keep him awake. "Remember your bike fund? You still owe me a race." Lucas managed a weak smile. "Promise?" "Promise." At the hospital, time slowed to a crawl. Nathan paced the waiting room while Lila sat with Maya, who clung to her mother's arm. Every tick of the clock scraped against his nerves. He replayed the fall again and again, what he could have done differently, what he should have seen. When the doctor finally emerged, Nathan froze. "He's going to be fine," the man said. "Just a mild concussion. A few stitches, but no lasting damage." Lila covered her mouth, tears spilling down. Nathan exhaled so hard it hurt. "You can see him now," the doctor added. In the small room, Lucas lay propped against a pillow, a white bandage around his head. His eyes fluttered open. "Hey," he mumbled. "You came." Nathan swallowed the lump in his throat. "Of course I did." "You didn't even change your clothes," the boy whispered with a grin. "You look like a wet dog." "I mate." Nathan laughed, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. "Then you'd better get better fast, so you can teach me how to look brave again." Lucas's voice was faint but steady. "Dad, I knew you'd come." The word hit him like light after darkness, simple, instinctive, true. He didn't correct it. He couldn't. He just took the boy's small hand and held it, feeling the pulse beneath his fingers. Across the room, Lila stood motionless, tears glinting in her eyes. She came closer, whispering, "You didn't just save him, Nathan. You saved yourself." He looked up, her words sinking deep. For the first time, he didn't try to fight them. He simply nodded. Outside, fireworks still burst faintly over the town. Tiny echoes of joy carried through the hospital windows. The night smelled of rain and antiseptic, and yet it felt like the cleanest air Nathan had ever breathed. When Lucas finally drifted to sleep, Nathan stepped into the hallway. Lila followed. Neither spoke for a long time. Then she reached for his hand, hesitated, and didn't let go. Through the glass, they watched the last fireworks fade into smoke. What remained was quieter, smaller, but real, like the slow, steady rhythm of a heart finding its way back to love. Outside, the festival fireworks began again, marking not celebration, but redemption. Winter crept quietly into Port Townsend, dusting the rooftops with frost. The storm, the festival, the fear, they had all faded into something softer, like a memory retold around a warm table. Nathan walked along Water Street one morning, the air sharp and clear. Through the cafe window, he saw Lila laughing with a customer while Maya and Lucas drew snowmen on the fogged glass. The sign outside had changed. Maple and Sunlight Coffee. Art and family. He paused, reading the last word again. Family. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and roasted beans wrapped around him. Morning, Lila said, smiling easily now. You're late. I figured the boss wouldn't fire me. She handed him an apron. Not if you make the customers smile. Maya looked up from her drawing. Mom says smiles are free refills. Smart kid, Nathan said, ruffling her hair. The cafe buzzed with gentle life tourists sipping cocoa, neighbors trading stories, the twins darting between tables. Everything glowed in golden morning light, like the whole place was breathing in peace. When the rush quieted, Lila poured 2 mugs and joined him by the window. Outside, the harbor shimmered silver under the pale Sunday. Sometimes I still think about the past, she said softly. So do I, he answered. But maybe that's how we remember what matters. She looked at him for a long moment. You stayed, he smiled. For once, I did. Upstairs, Margaret sat with the children, helping them wrap small gifts for the town's toy drive. The old woman's laughter drifted down the stairs, warm and unguarded. It blended with the smell of coffee, the hum of conversation, the quiet rhythm of forgiveness. Lila leaned her head against his shoulder. You ever think life gives second chances? Nathan looked around the cafe. The family, the light, the love, rebuilt from ruin. Only if we're brave enough to take them. Evening settled slowly over the harbor, the sky turning gold, then rose, then deep blue. The first snowflakes drifted past the cafe window. Inside, lights glowed warm against the glass, and music from an old record player filled the quiet. Nathan wiped down the counter while Lila closed the register. The twins sat near the tree in the corner, wrapping cookies for tomorrow's fundraiser. Their laughter rose and fell like a song he never wanted to end. When everything was done, Lila handed him a small mug painted by Maya. On the bottom, in wobbly handwriting, it said, Home Brew. He smiled. Your daughter has good branding instincts. She gets it from you, Lila said softly. They stood together, watching snow gather along the windowsill. Funny, Nathan murmured. I used to think success was noise, the calls, the applause, the headlines. But now, Lila waited. Now it's this, he said. Quiet. Hands busy. Hearts full. She nodded, eyes bright. That's what we build here, peace in small pieces. Margaret came downstairs, her silver hair caught in the glow of the tree lights. The kids are asleep, she whispered. They insisted on leaving cookies for Santa and one for you, Nathan. Said you've been good this year. He laughed softly. First time anyone said that in decades. Margaret smiled, touching his arm. I see your father in you again, but this time, the part he forgot to use. The gentle part. The old clock above the counter chimed 8. Lila poured one last cup, set it before him. What makes your coffee so special? She teased. Nathan looked around the family. The warmth. The flicker of snow outside. It's brewed with forgiveness. Lila reached across the counter, took his hand. Then pour me a cup forever. Outside, the street was quiet. Only the hush of snow and the faint shimmer of Christmas lights. Through the window, their silhouettes glowed 2 adults, 2 sleeping children upstairs, one home reborn from sorrow. And for the first time, Nathan understood what he'd been chasing all those years. Home wasn't a place. It was a choice, one he'd finally made. The snow has long melted from the windows of Maple and Sunlight, yet its warmth lingers in the hearts it once gathered. In that little cafe by the harbor, life has slowed to the rhythm of coffee cups clinking and quiet laughter drifting between tables. Nathan still wipes the counter every morning, watching the light spill across the worn wood. And when Lila hums softly while the twins draw by the window, he realizes that redemption doesn't arrive all at once. It settles quietly. like the sunrise after a long and restless night. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to understand what home really means. For Nathan, it wasn't a mansion overlooking a skyline or the sound of applause in boardrooms. It was the whisper of forgiveness in a small coastal town, the scent of cinnamon and maple, and the laughter of two children who called him Dad before he dared to believe he deserved it. Through their eyes, he discovered that love isn't a reward for perfection. It's a grace offered to those who choose to stay, to rebuild, and to keep showing up even after the storm. Dear listener, if you've followed this story to the end, take a moment to breathe it in. The sound of coffee brewing, the hush of falling snow, the feeling of a second chance quietly unfolding. Maybe you too have known what it means to carry regret, or to wish for one more chance to make something right. Life doesn't always hand us grand gestures. Often, it offers small doors of kindness that we must be brave enough to open. Love and redemption grow not from words, but from small, steadfast acts of care. No fortune or success can replace the warmth of family, the gentle touch, the shared silence, the trust rebuilt over time. Happiness doesn't demand perfection. It blooms when we dare to live for someone other than ourselves. In a world that often praises speed and ambition, the heart still longs for something simpler, the smell of coffee shared at dawn, a forgiving smile, a promise kept. Just as a porch light burns quietly through a long winter night, one simple act of compassion can guide us and those we love through the darkest roads of life. Maybe it's calling an old friend you haven't spoken to, or setting an extra plate at the table for someone who needs company. Whatever it is, it reminds us that grace is not found in grand moments, but in the everyday courage to care. So tonight, as you listen to the last note of this story, perhaps ask yourself who in your life might be waiting for that small gesture, that quiet forgiveness. Because sometimes offering peace to another soul is the surest way to find it in your own. If this story touched your heart, press 1" the comments to let us know. And if you have thoughts or ideas to share, press 0. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, the world may be loud, but kindness never needs to shout. It just needs to stay like the gentle light in a cafe window on a snowy night, guiding us home.